Hey guys, welcome back to the Digital Pen Pals podcast. My name is Zach, and I'm here with my co-host.
Uh, I'm Lincoln or Tux. How you guys all doing today?
Doing pretty good. Today we actually have a guest, a very special guest. It's somebody that I found on TikTok recently, an amazing artist. His name is Andrew Peña, if I'm pronouncing your last name right.
Yeah, almost. But
Peña?
yeah, nobody gets it right, so you did a really good try.
Okay. I actually speak Spanish, so that's kind of funny that I messed it up.
Oh, well, now I'm judging you.
I know, I really have my white accent coming in now. But yeah, I found Andrew through TikTok, and I really loved his landscape paintings. He does a bunch of plein air stuff. But yeah, I'll let him explain kind of what he does. What is it that you do, Andrew?
So I am a plein air painter on my own time. I actually work in the field animation industry, but on my own time, I'm a plein air painter, and I like going out into wherever I can go and just paint whatever I see.
That's awesome. And like, what got you into this? Like, what was like kind of like the spark of doing art as a career?
Think the spark of it is I kind of used to draw as that kid, that would draw in the corner of the class and was pretty quiet. I wasn't that talkative when I was younger, so it's kind of like my way to get by. But I didn't think I was going to become an artist. I actually got into music, and I was more of a musician for a really long time. That didn't work out, and then I ended up falling back on art and finding that again. And as for painting and plein air painting, I mean, that's only been the last, I want to say, 3 to 4 years that I've really started doing that. And that was more to find a sense of kind of structure in my own life because I go out every day now and I paint, and it's kind of like my own form of meditation.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is super sweet. How long have you been in the animation industry?
Um, well, I actually only been in studio this last year. I got into my first studio working at Warner Brothers, but before that, I was still just doing freelance and going to art center in Pasadena.
Oh
Oh,
wow.
that's so
I got,
awesome.
yeah,
That
it's been a journey. It's been a heck of a journey. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, that's great. And when you first started doing like plein air, I mean, I know we're emphasizing the plein air part. I mean, you do a lot more, but I was just curious
I
about
know.
it. Like when you started it, how did you learn about it? I mean, did you learn about that at art center, or is that something that you kind of picked up because you heard about it from somewhere?
I think I heard I used to always go out and sketch and draw and do that a lot. Like I would go to parks, I would go to cafes, and I would do drawing a lot. And I started actually I think it was because of Instagram that I started following a few people that would go out and do plein air painting. And I just got fascinated by the idea of like taking your whole paint setup and going painting in different places. But I wanted to be like the cool kid on the block, and so I would paint in cafes and I would paint people and things that I saw rather than painting landscapes. I was really hesitant and really like fought back on wanting to paint landscapes because I felt like that's all you saw with plein air paintings. So I would do that, and then I actually took a class from a guy called Mike Hernandez, a teacher at Art Center, and he opened my eyes to gouache for plein air painting and painting landscapes and all of that good stuff. And I really just got addicted to it. I think I got addicted to the idea of painting wherever you were at, whether that was in the middle of a crowded area in the cafe back before this year or last year, or out in the open after taking a trip somewhere and just painting in the middle of the beach or Vasquez Rocks or other different places. So I think I just got addicted to it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, you say addicted, but like, I mean, you found some sort of like passion, right? You found like the connection between, like you said, meditating and painting something from real life, right? And I feel like you definitely take your like you turn it into like your kind of like style or your interpretation of it in a way because of like the colors. Like I love like impressionistic color, which is like, you basically, for those who might not know, you basically are taking colors that you're just by impulse you're like, yes, that's the color, I'm going to go with it, even if it's a little more extreme or if it's a little bit more like saturated or more extreme than what the actual color is. It's just, I love that stuff. I love seeing it in painting. That's like one of my favorite things is seeing like the impressionistic kind of colors come out.
Yeah, that's the same way with me too. Like I I went through my phase, as I think most artists do, of trying to just replicate exactly what you're seeing, trying to become a camera yourself. But I mean, I'm also in photography, and my camera does a better job than I'll ever do. So I don't want to just replicate it exactly what I see. And there's something in paintings, and I was always attracted to impressionistic paintings. So I'm so glad they even made that connection, because that's my favorite era of paintings, was capturing the feel or capturing the light versus capturing exactly what you see, you know?
Yeah, because like I feel like, especially since I believe you make a background, made backgrounds for Warner Brothers. I don't know if you still do or not. Is that true?
Yeah, I still
Okay,
do the
yeah.
background
So like I feel like
for that.
you really gotta like take your impression on it, and because it's more of a feeling, because you're trying to give people like the setting of like what the vibe of the place is like versus like just literally what it looks like. I mean, that's the whole point of being an
Yeah, especially
artist.
when you're working in the yeah, especially when you're working in the animation side versus anything in live action. I mean, you're creating the feel. But the fun part about it is, at work I do line art, so I do the background design, and so I don't even paint at work. I paint on my own time, and I think I like that separation where I draw at work, but I paint for myself, so I don't ever get burnt out.
That way you're just not
Because
driving yourself crazy.
exactly. You know, that being said, I know painters that do both. They plan or paint and they paint for their job, and I look at them like they're crazy, because I don't know how they don't burn themselves out, because that's just painting left and right. You're painting to make the man happy, and then you're painting to make you happy. And it's just like,
Yeah.
how do you balance both and not get burned out? So when I got that clear cut separation of painting for myself and drawing for work, it kind of made my art work life balance a lot easier.
That's fantastic. Yeah, like I feel like that's hard, is just like finding that balance between, doing something you're passionate about, but also being able to make a living to do your passion on the side. And that's something that like, I know I've been struggling with a lot lately, is trying to figure out that balance. Because I feel like finally in life you're like, oh, I finally found what I love, but then you're like, oh, but I still have to, keep my day job and make sure that's going well. And so that gets like pretty tough.
That, but I mean, no matter how much you love your passion, everything becomes work at a certain point. And I don't think you want to admit that as an artist, but I think the moment you start thinking, oh man, I got to go to work as an artist, you're like, darn, this is what I didn't want to do. This is why I didn't become whatever. And then you're like still stressed to go to work. And, you just don't want that break to happen. I think that's why I'm really happy, at least in animation, that it's like contract based. Like, so for other people, that's stressful. For me, it's like, great, I got this for a year, and then I could do that for another year, and then I could take a break if I want to, and no one could tell me I can't. Like, I love that contract-based idea that I do for animation, because you jump shows. So
Yeah,
one show might ask one thing for you, and another show asks another thing, and I never really get burnt out.
that's
Yeah, I
interesting.
love that. And you get to explore different styles, different environments, and everything throughout that. Now, here's a
Mm-hmm.
question that just came to my mind. How, like, what basically got you your job, I guess, at Warner Brothers? Like, what was the sequence of events, or what led you to that?
It all started from plein air painting, believe
Oh,
it or
that's
not.
That's
awesome.
sick.
Yeah. So I was still at school while I was plein air painting pretty often. Again, it was my way of de-stressing. It wasn't to get better at painting, it was to de-stress from the stress that Art Center does to you. So I would go out and paint, and then I started painting with friends that were painting, and I actually found them through Instagram. So I started getting noticed through Instagram and started getting asked to paint with these groups of people that were in the industry. So I already have friends that were in the industry, but they weren't like helping me get jobs or anything. I just knew them. And so when I went out painting, one of the guys, he was already working at Warner Brothers, but he was leaving to go work on a feature animation. He'd been asked for a job, and this was around the time when I was running out of money to go to school, because I've been in school for a very long, in and out of school for a very long time. I mean, I'm 31 and I got my actual job last year, so
Wow.
to give you an aspect of how in and out I've been. So I ran out of money to go to school, and so I wasn't going to finish Art Center. So I was like, what am I going to do? I got to find a job. So I started asking around, and this guy that I had been painting with a few times, he was like, oh, I have someone that was looking for somebody to do work. I can put your portfolio out there. And they ended up calling me. And what's funny is my portfolio was full of paintings, but he looked at it and he goes, now you're a background designer. I'm going to hire you for line work. And I looked at him like he was crazy, because I never even used Photoshop. Like, I'm a Procreate kind of guy. I use my iPad,
Same.
and a traditional guy. So they're like, this is Photoshop. You got to learn how to do this line work. That looked like it was crazy. And he was like, no, you can do it. And he was right. He's a good art director. There's nothing like having a good art director that actually believes in you. So he gave me a chance. I proved him right, and he kept me. And now he's actually kept me on the next show that we're going on. And I owe a lot to him because he saw something that I didn't see. And I've actually found my work passion in background design that I didn't even know I had because I thought I wanted to get into painting. So it was a funny sequence of events that all came from me going out and plein painting.
That's insane. Yeah, I know with like painting, my painting teachers and professors, I mean, like I didn't get as good at it as I wanted to. Like one of my dreams is to do plein air, so like that's why I reached out a while ago and I was like, hey, what kind of like setup do you use? Because I'm curious about looking into getting some. I haven't yet, but that's something that's been like a dream of mine to go out and do plein air painting. Because like for me, I love plein air and like there's like concept art as well that I really find fascinating because there's like so many like similarities between those. And so I want to learn to do it physically and then do it digitally as well. I think that'd be such a fun thing to do. But yeah, like my professors always say, like, yeah, with painting, painting is drawing and drawing is painting. Like you never get away from drawing really. Even though there's not line art or in paintings technically, but there is, contrast and there's, these darker shapes and lighter shapes that you can put into it. And so that was kind of an eye opener to me to kind of realize there's such a connection between, drawing is a skill that goes across all mediums basically with art.
Very true. I mean, it's funny because first getting started on the job, and the advice that I kept getting was to treat the line work like I treat my paintings, working with shapes and bigger shapes and smaller shapes and putting things into focus and all of that goes into the line work as well. So it's literally interchangeable. Uh, and once you understand that, you can do both a bit better. Um, with that being said, it still took me a while to just understand that concept for one, let alone being able to use that for both. So I think all of it is always easier said than done. But I actually got into Art Center for concept art because that's what I thought I wanted to do at first was the concept art entertainment design track. And then they beat that out of me where I was like, I don't want to do that. But I kept going because the skills you grasp through that track is the same thing you would get grasp from going to environmental design, illustration, film. I mean, everything, they put it all into that track. So I don't regret it. And a lot of the things that I learned from it, I took. But I did learn that maybe that wasn't my area, was particularly concept art. But that's actually what I went to Art Center for.
That's crazy. Yeah, I entered school thinking that I was going to do animation because that was like my dream. That was like the only thing I could ever think of me being like really excited about. I was like, oh, I could do animation. But then I started realizing it, like I wasn't quite sure on like the job security side of it because I mean, I'm from Arizona. And I was like, so basically all the jobs are in California. And for me, California was kind of expensive. And I was like, oh, but then they have to like, switch jobs every year or every show that they do.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm not sure if I'm prepared for that. Like, so I was looking for more of a consistent job. And so that got me worried. And then I was like, oh man, but drawing frame by frame, I don't know if I can handle that. Plus there's all sorts of other animation, because I'd rather do 2D animation, but then, there's all sorts of other types of animations that are coming out that are quicker. But, to me, I feel like they almost kind of lose the aesthetic that I like from 2D animation. But so I ended up switching gears and now I'm like full on, like, I love doing content creation. I love making videos. And so like, I'm trying to make all that work together, like trying to pull my interests all together, where I can, do my own thing, not under somebody basically. But yeah, that's funny how like, I feel like everyone goes into school thinking they're going to do one thing, but then they switch lanes.
I think everyone does that. And I think that's what everyone's afraid of is when you start school, everyone wants to believe that they know exactly what they wanted to do when they go straight in there and they work their ass off to get that. And then, a little bit down the line, they're like, wow, maybe that's not what I like. But then some people don't want to admit it because they've already put in, 6 terms into it and however thousands of dollars that expensive art schools have you do. And you're almost afraid to make that turn. But I'm always telling even people that I was going to school with, just because I was going to school like later, and people that I know now that are still in school, it's like that's probably the only place you get to make that left turn without the fear of income because you're still in school,
Yeah.
Versus trying to make that turn when you're already in the industry when you should have done that exploring inside of school. And I don't know, I feel like like when I was going to school at Art Center, they didn't really make that apparent as much as they should have within the entertainment design track, and I wish that that was more uh, made more normal. Is just the idea of really exploring and maybe proving yourself wrong that you don't want to be particularly in, like you said, animation, that you want to be more in content creation, or you don't want to be in concept art, you want to be particularly in background design, because a lot of the students that would make that change, they were almost looked down on. Now, Art Center is full of people that tend to be a little more elitist, and I'll gladly say that on record too.
You know, I understand. I've heard a lot of stories.
But yeah, and so if you were in entertainment design and you said, "Man, I don't like this. I want to get into background design and illustration," offers that, you were talked down on in the track. You know, like they'd be like, "Oh, you're so and so. You couldn't take it. He left." You know, and it's like that's not right, because the whole concept is finding yourself. You know, nobody knows exactly what they want straight out of high school.
Right. Yeah, like I found like college to be such like an interesting part where you're just like you're supposed to explore different things. Like there are so many different mediums. Like there's a whole class. I don't know how it was for you, but my school wasn't like an art school, dedicated art school, but it was more offered a degree for art.
Mm-hmm.
There's really cool people there that had worked for like different like they worked for DreamWorks and stuff like that. So they had some kind of like bigger names, I guess, teaching classes. But yeah, we had a class called media experimentation where we just like you just explored all types of mediums. Like each project was a different medium, and I never really got around to doing gouache. That's something I still dream to get into, because I like the balance of gouache, because it's like it's between like acrylic paints where it dries quicker, but then also has like such a nice like opaqueness to it that I don't know. I like the colors that come from gouache so much.
Mm-hmm. It's like a combo of all of them. Like, I can make the comparison to every other paint medium that there is, but because you can use it like that, you can use it like watercolor, you can use it like acrylic, you can use it like oil paints where you're painting wet on wet and it comes back to life. But then it dries matte, which is like the only medium that dries that kind of matte. And and I don't know, I could talk about it forever. I have classes on it. I talk about it all the time. Like it's just my choice. And it was funny, like I fought it for so long until I took my professor that really showed me how to use it, because I had another professor before him back at another school that I had went to. And I don't know, I hated the way that he used it, and I hated the way that he talked about it, and it just didn't vibe with how I like to paint. But then when I found out how you could use it, and then after all this time, it's so versatile. Like you can find so many different styles and ways of painting that are done with gouache, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's definitely like a really cool medium. That I mean they're not the most expensive gouache. It's like probably like a cheap set off of Amazon that I think I bought for one of my classes, but barely used it for like the white gouache or something is what we needed. But
Mm-hmm.
I still want to delve into it and see like what to do. And this is more of like a technical question, but like what kind of paper do you use?
I actually use I use matte boards, so
Oh,
it's like the cheapest of the cheap because it's supposed to be for framing. You can get it really like
yeah.
huge, and then you cut it down. So like one huge, like I don't even know what's like 60 by something that inches. That would be like $6,
Wow,
you
that's
know.
cheap.
And then I cut that down and I paint on that. And I bought it on accident actually because I thought it was illustration board and I was in a rush one day at Blix.
Yeah.
And I got that. I cut it down, and I was like, "This is amazing! This is an
Yeah, it
amazing
looks
board. Why have I
great.
never found this?"
It
Yeah,
was a
it's
happy little
really.
accident.
Yeah,
It was a really happy.
we
It's a fraction of the
yeah,
price.
like we use this all the time with my final projects. We'd always have to get them framed, right? And so like
Hmm.
that is so cool that you just use like framing, because like yeah, that's fantastic. Dang, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm pretty sure after I made that suggestion a while ago, Blix started running out of a few because I know a lot of people started going to buy them out instead of the illustration board. Because again, although illustration board is really nice, the way that I paint, I like smooth surfaces.
Yeah.
Even illustration board, it's not white enough. Like the white that you get from the matte board, I like to use that when I'm using when I paint, because I let that show through the underpainting, and I use that in how I paint. Versus the illustration board is a little darker already, And I don't know, it's pricey. I mean,
Yeah.
elevation board is a lot more expensive. It's like double the thickness, but again, most of the time I'm just, if when I go out painting, every day, I don't want to paint on the best material out there. I want to paint on a good material that's not the crappiest material. And matte board has kind of proved itself to stand the time. Like I've been using it for the last couple like year or two.
Interesting. And what kind of like is there a brand of paint? Sorry, this is like another technical question, but like what kind of paint, what
Yeah.
kind of
I'm
brand
sure it'll be
paint?
helpful to someone
Yeah,
out there.
someone out there who will help. I mean, it's gonna help me because I kind of want to get into it.
It'll help someone, but really it'll help me. Now I use Holbein. Holbein gouache is my go-to. I use it straight from the tube. A lot of people use it in different ways. Like some people will like get those little square dividers, sealer, airtight sealer containers, and I'll get their paints already. But I like putting paints down on the glass palette and just kind of starting from there. So Holbein, I just like the consistency. I started off Winsor Newton because that's what I was taught, but I feel like it's a little chalky
Mm-hmm.
compared to Holbein, which is already a bit more liquidy. It feels like a thicker watercolor, and I like that. So that's what I use.
That's really good. Yeah, I just have like probably like the base like I think it was probably like $16 off of Amazon or something. But
That's like the price of one
yeah. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure this isn't the best
wash.
quality gouache. But I'll probably use it just to play with it and try to get used to at least like gouache in general and then maybe move on to like once that depletes, I'll move on to some better paints.
Well, the good thing is if you get the set that like the Holbein set where they give you like a warm and cool of each primary color and a couple burnt sienna and a couple other colors, that's not too much for like the set, like in the $50-$60 range. But like for like a full set of paints that'll probably last you for a bit. So that's always a good one to start. That's the one that I suggest when I'm teaching is that set, and then I got a very more specific like group of 6 colors that I end up using, but that only happened after like years of like kind of figuring out what to switch out and what to keep and what I like to use. So
Hmm. That's cool.
So
Yeah.
what would you say is one of your biggest struggles like with like your plein air paintings, like either at the beginning or even now today?
I think I think it's definitely changed. I think the problems are always there, and they kind of change as you go along with your own painting journey, right? So for me, before it was over detail and trying to capture more and not having the focus, and then after that, it was not understanding the how versatile the gouache can be, where I can actually paint thick or thin. Then it was just a time frame. I would sit there painting for 2 hours, and obviously the light changes when you're plein painting. But I would be stubborn and keep trying to paint longer, paint more. So I started cutting that time down from 2 hours to now it's about 30 minutes, 40 minutes the most that I ever paint.
Wait, really? That's so fast.
Yeah, and I think it happens as you paint more and
Yeah.
as you're painting. Like the sun just moves too quickly. Even when you're painting, when the sun is above, like say about like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, like the sun is going to be more or less in the same area for the next couple hours. But if you're really, focused on what you're looking at, like everything just changes. And not only that, but I don't have the patience. I mean, I paint every day. Like I can't stand painting for longer than an hour. And the few times that I have, I usually hate that painting. So,
That's awesome.
but yeah, so it's definitely changed. Like for me, the most recent problem I had was just feeling like I had plateaued for like the last like 3 months. Like I saw no change in the paintings I was doing. I found no differences. I couldn't, no matter how much I tried to switch it up, like getting a new brush or changing the colors. Like it just felt like no different for the last 6 months. And I'd say the last like week or two, I had the biggest changes where I suddenly felt like, wow, my paintings look different again, and I'm happy with them. But for like a good while, I kind of plateaued. So that was kind of my biggest struggle, actually.
That's awesome. Yeah. Like and yeah, like that's like the hard part too is like especially with like what me and Lincoln have been trying to do too is like content creators slash we're primarily artists but we're trying to do like content game because that's kind of where things are at with like the art world now is like doing stuff on your own. You usually
Yeah.
have to have an online presence, right? And so we do
Yep.
streaming and stuff and yeah, I think the hardest thing that I found is like consistency. And I've seen that you've been very consistent too, because I've always noticed when I look at your page from time to time or come across a video, I'm like, wow, he's pumping out like a video or two, like of quality, good content. And I've just always been like impressed by that. And like, what recommendations do you have for being like consistent, especially with something like this, where it's like, it's almost like a habit where you're just painting something every day?
I think it's easy setup. You know, like a lot of the times, just talking about painting, I didn't want to paint because the so frustrating. I had to set up my palette. I had to get my darn the paper, the water. I had to clean my brush. I had to get all the paints down, and just something as simple as a quick setup makes consistency be so much faster. And also putting it at a time of the day that kind of feels like exercise. Like I don't I don't exercise. Maybe I should, but I don't exercise. And this is my replacement for exercising. Is I go out and I paint. So now I've started like I've been trying to park farther than where I want to paint and walk to where I paint, so I at least get that darn walking. But it's like I set up times where this is my warm up or this is my cool down. So either after work when I'm trying to do more night paintings or sunset paintings, or in the mornings, it's how I ramp up so that way I do want to paint. And then I can start working where I've already gotten that out of my system. And I'm like, all right, I'm ready to work.
Hmm.
That's what I used to do back when I was still working. This has been my month off, so I've been painting all throughout the random times of the day. But also just having an easier setup. So I've gone through a lot. Made pochade boxes. I've bought pochade boxes. I've upgraded when I started working to a pricier pochade box because it was just quicker setup for me. It worked out perfect. It was easy to clean the glass. It was easy to take in and out. It's lightweight. I have the perfect size backpack. Like, you don't think that matters, but it matters. Like, I have the perfect size backpack that fits everything in there, where I don't have any more or any less than what I need. I have my fanny pack that has my colors that I use. And I use one brush. I don't use any more than one brush.
Yeah.
Lately, I've been experimenting with one more tiny brush, but I always use the same flat brush. So I'm never sitting there sifting through all my brushes to find which one's the perfect one to use. Like, no, I make that one flat 3/4 brush work for me, and I don't use anything more than that. So it's all ease. It's all ease. That's really what it is for me. So I think the easier you make it for yourself to practice something like this, where you want to be consistent, it's that, you know. And also I do it for myself. Like, I'm sure with the content creating too, I mean, that just makes you happy to do it. So that always helps a lot. Is I'm doing it for me. It's not a homework assignment. It's not practicing to make work better. It really is just, it's for me. Like I said, it's broken the barrier of working to be better to just being meditative.
I love that. Our buddy Mitchell, he does pointillism paintings, and he kind of said something like that similarly when he was on. He basically said, do like a painting for yourself and don't post it anywhere. Like, just make it for yourself.
That too. Yeah.
Because as artists, we get so caught up in trying to get things in people's faces on social media and make money and all this stuff. But like you said, artists doing art can be a form of meditation, and it should be.
Yeah, exactly. And I've, like, it took me a long time to break that barrier of posting for people versus posting for yourself. And I feel like when you're in the grind and you're trying to get the followers, or you're trying to get the clout, or whatever you're trying to get through your reason of posting, it takes away from that meditative state that you can get yourself in when you're painting, where it is for you. And at a certain point, either you don't post the painting and you paint for yourself, you take a break, or you really kind of break that barrier of posting for people. Like, I post to keep myself accountable to myself. Like, I'm proud of all the paintings I do. Like, if you look at my Instagram, I post once a day, more or less. Sometimes I go a week without posting because I don't care. It's my own Instagram. But most of the time, I post every day. And it's because I went out to paint, and I'm proud that I went to paint and I had fun painting. But there's a lot of paintings that I post that I think are butt ugly. Like, I genuinely think there are some very bad paintings that I people don't ever respond bad or good. I mean, you never know how people are going to respond because that they don't know, you know. So
Yeah.
you see my sketches, you see my ideas that went bad, and you see my painting love, and they all get the same love regardless or hate regardless of what I think. So I think that's how I was able to break away from worrying so much about what people think about my posts. Is I post the good and the bad every day just because I'm proud that I painted, you know.
Yeah,
I
that
love
makes
that
sense.
attitude so much.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Um, yeah, I think one of the questions that I've had too, because I've noticed on your Instagram, I've seen a few that are like I'm assuming they're digital. Some of them, right?
Very few that are. I have because I've done some paintings for Procreate for like their launches,
Uh huh.
and
Oh
so
shoot.
Oh
I'll
wow, that's awesome.
yes. So Procreate they've had me do uh for the last launch for Procreate I did two, and then the last launch for Procreate Pocket I done some, so they posted one, and then I'll post those, and then I kind of had fun doing it because I realized from the last time that I had done digital painting since I was at Art Center, I actually was replicating the way that I paint. Because they asked me if I could do it, and I was like, I don't know, I'll try it out. So I replicated the way that I paint traditionally with Procreate because the brushes that just the ones that they use, I use one or two that they have, really replicated how I use gouache, and I just had fun with it. I painted on like one layer, and I just kind of treated it like I was plein air painting, and it's hard to tell the difference, which is I was surprised. Like I wasn't trying to make it that way. It's just Procreate offers you those options, which are pretty cool. So yeah, there are some digital paintings on my feed, and I think there's like one character because I did a challenge from a friend that was doing a challenge for characters. So there's a little digital art that
That's
sneaks up
awesome.
in there.
And because I know
Yeah.
I know people are gonna be curious because I'm curious. Because sometimes like I feel like I'm in the mood too, where it's like sometimes brushes don't matter. It just depends. Like it's just a tool. Depends what the artist does with them. But like, what are those two brushes that you use that replicated gouache? If you do you remember them
So
or?
I think it more replicates the way that I paint versus
Oh,
gouache,
okay.
but they're in the artistic section in Procreate. I think it's called artistic brushes, and I just kind of played with
Oh,
those.
okay.
I couldn't tell you what they were because I don't remember,
Gotcha.
but they kind of because when you I like the randomness
Yeah.
of it, and so because of that they kind of replicated how I like to paint because I paint like cutting into shapes. So I'll paint a big shape and then I'll paint another shape that cuts into that shape, and that's why I like gouache is because I can do that with it, kind of like you would with oil or acrylic.
Hmm.
So because I paint that way, I did that with digital, and it created that feel of painting traditionally.
That's so cool. I love that. And like that's something that I've like tried to tell people too, like whenever I'm able to like mention it during like a stream or something. I'm like, yeah, like traditional painting is like my number one thing. I'm like, if you can do stuff traditionally, it's gonna be so much easier to do it digitally because you jump into digital and you try doing these effects, you're like, oh, the effects or the brushes are gonna save me and make my art look cool. But in reality, it's like you need to learn like some techniques first, because that will like bleed into your digital art skills, and
That's it.
that's
It's just the
exactly a good
same.
example is like you're applying things that you've learned and it makes your painting so much better digitally.
Yeah, and I think it's literally that. It bleeds into it whether you know it or not. So the more that you do traditionally, that'll bleed into what you do digitally because you'll have that knowledge. It's kind of like if you are doing concept art or just drawing characters in general, you have a knowledge of what you've already seen. You have you have your own, you know, and so you pull from that. And so when you're art painting and thinking about color and light, you're already pulling from all of these things that you've already practiced in your head, and you're using that. With that being said, I'll definitely after being in the industry and seeing and talking to background painters that I've seen, and I think the reason why I don't want to get into background painting is because there is a order of process when you are painting for professionally because there's a speed that you need to get it done at, and so it is a combination of the knowledge you have from just knowing how to paint and the knowledge you have on how to all the tips and tricks of Photoshop, right? So a lot of it is I can paint traditionally or do it digitally the way I would traditionally with brushes to replicate stuff. Or after I'm done, I could throw on one filter, and now it all looks like it was done on watercolor, and it's pretty close if you know how to use it correctly. And so I think that's why I fought against, or I learned that I didn't want to get into painting because the mechanics become a little too structured. Because when I paint, I'm a very big person of, I'm a very big believer of letting the painting find itself. And I can only do that if I have nobody's deadline to worry about. Because I can't do that if I'm in the industry. If I'm in the line and I tell my art director, it's going to find itself, I mean, he's going to, you know? So in there and I'm painting for myself every day and I paint some ugly ones because I just like to let the painting find itself. That's where my meditative part comes from, you know? So just differences of working in-house versus for your own in painting.
That's interesting. And like you doing this, like meditating and stuff, how has it like helped your life in general, like with like mental health? Because I know that's like a big issue nowadays. A lot of more people are dealing with that kind of thing. Like what changes have you seen in your life from being able to meditate once a day doing this?
Well, I think I replaced it. Like I replaced something bad with something good because being 31 growing up, I mean, for us, like at this age, and I'm not even that old, but for this age, like anxiety and mental health issues and all of that kind of stuff wasn't really brought up when I was young. I didn't even know it was a thing. And I just, like growing up, I have cousins that would just pick on me if I had problems, like in that area of feeling anxious. I didn't know there were words for it. And growing up, I started learning or understanding and accepting that it is a real thing, and it is something that I'd have to pay attention to, my own mental health. So the idea of meditating, I can't get myself to just sit down and meditate. And back when I was younger, without knowing it, I was replacing dealing with stresses and meditating with smoking, like cigarettes, just smoking. So when I quit that, not to get all deep on you guys, but when I quit that, I needed a replacement. I needed something to help with my meditative state, or something to help me kind of have structure and to de-stress, especially going through art center and being in a more stressful environment. And I found that getting up to paint every day was in itself meditative, and I didn't even know it was. And then when I was out in the open painting or in a cafe painting, that was my way of de-stressing. And I kind of found it kind of accidentally. So kind of replaced the smoking, and now I was painting instead, you know?
That's awesome. Yeah,
I
I
love
love
that.
that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's crazy how things happen, I mean, without you trying to, right? Like things just kind of fall into place sometimes. And then after you look back, you're like, oh, and I never, I didn't know that had that much of a pull on me, but apparently it did. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I love that.
So what would you say would be, we're kind of nearing the end here, but what would you say is the number one tip you would give to all aspiring artists out there, beginner, intermediate, and even experienced artists out there?
I've lived by this specific rule that I got before I even was deep into trying to become an artist. It was right when I was making a change from music to art, and I had a teacher tell me to have three things in your life when you're trying to become an artist. Is you have to have art that makes you money, art that you're learning, and art for yourself. And those three things can sometimes, two of those can block into one, so you have two things, but you always have those three things going. So I'm always trying to learn when I'm painting for myself, or I've been recently learning Blender just to learn.
Oh, I love Blender.
Yeah, Blender's
I
awesome.
figure out to you can help me later then, but I'm trying to figure out Blender. I learned ZBrush, I like that better, but Blender, oh, it looks so good. So I'm trying to learn Blender, and that's for me. My learning, so I'm still learning. I paint for myself when I do plein air painting, and I have my job. And all of them are art related, but it's the three things that keep you going. So I think a lot of the times artists try to do all three in one. They think that when they get their job, it's gonna be the end result, and that's gonna be their passion. They're not gonna do anything else, and then they realize they have no life. People that just do art for themselves, but they have no money, and the people that learn one thing and they don't want to learn anymore, and then they become old news. Like they don't learn new programs. They don't want to grow with where art is growing, because I mean that's the point of art. Art is always growing. There's always something to learn. You can be the best at one and suck at the other, and you can sit there and learn more. I mean that's what I love art is. You always have something to learn. So that's my advice: is you got to do those three things to be a happy artist.
That is seriously so cool. Like when you said those three things, I was like, it was like lightning struck my brain. I was like, that makes so much more, like it's things that like I have like sort of like formulated in my mind over time, but like it was like perfectly put into words, like what I had probably already knew, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. That makes me feel inspired to like want to, because I see in my own life, I see things where like there's like, oh, here's a passion project I'm working on that makes me happy, but it's also helping me make money, or things like that, where it starts to, you can kind of see the divides between the art that you're doing in your life. And I think that's like the balance is like, when you in life, you need to eat, you need to sleep, and recreation or some other third one, I don't really know, but or socialize or something, I don't know. But you need. I
think it's those are the ones that you ask to make sure. Why am I mad? Am I hungry? No.
Yeah.
Am I sleepy? No. Oh, I need social interaction.
Yeah. Yeah. That's hard to get now this time, but I think that's just so true. Is just if your life is going to be something, you have to treat it like, it's your survival. I don't know how to describe it, but like that just makes so much more sense. And I love that.
Could be helpful. That's been stuck with me for a while, and I don't even remember that teacher had told me because it was so long ago.
Yeah.
But when he or she said that, it stuck in my head, and without even knowing, I was living by that. I was living by that until like asked me a question, same thing, and that's the first thing that popped in my head, and I was like, that's like my little mantra that I've been going by for so long.
Yeah, it's like the principle you never know about.
Exactly.
Until you realize it, you're like, oh, that is true because I'm doing it right now.
So before we head on out here, we have one last thing. I know earlier you mentioned you had a class. Would you like to shout out any of your classes, if you sell prints, any merch, any social media outlets that you would like to just shout out and just let people know where they can find you and your wonderful art?
Yeah, actually, I just recently finally put it all into one place. So if you go to my Instagram and you click on that little bio and link or whatever it's called, you can see the connection to my classes, upcoming classes I'm having, free workshops. I have a few YouTube things that are going on. I have prints, and then I sell every single painting that I post. I have those up, originals. So we got a lot of things that you can find, but it's all literally on that link for my Instagram at @dashdrew_. You can find me there.
Yeah,
and we will have that in the link. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
We'll have that in the link in the video.
Thing. It's fine.
We'll put your Instagram link in there, and then we'll also put that link that's in your Instagram bio as well, just so everybody can find that. But thank you so much for coming on. This has been Andrew Peña.
Yeah,
there we go. So thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in.
Fun.
I mean, I'm just so grateful that you came out to the podcast, and it's so interesting because, like, to me, this is my last little bit. Sorry. You see, like, artists online, but you see their images, you see their artwork and stuff, but you don't really get to know them as a person sometimes. And so I think that's what's really fun about these podcasts is being able to like uncover and understand like artists' view of the worlds, and I feel like it makes your art make a lot more sense. And it, like, there puts more meaning into like what you're doing, because now it's like I look at your art now that I've talked to you and got to know you more, and now I see like I don't know, your art means more to me now than it did before. Even though it was great before, now it's amazing to me now.
That's the goal. I just gotta do more podcasts.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's really fun. I love doing this, and I'm a podcast person. I love listening to podcasts, and that's kind of what I listen to while I work. Oh, this is my last bit. So I really did enjoy that, and thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. You
Um,
want to send us out, Zach?
yeah. So thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. We're back to podcasts again. Last week was a little bit different because we had like an actual video. It's a fun thing we're trying to do. But yeah, we got a lot more interviews with a bunch more artists, and we're excited to share that with you guys and to be able to share behind the scenes of how the artists work and how to become better. And hopefully this has helped you. And if it has, feel free to share it with some other people or other buddies that might find this interesting. And we thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.